Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I'm Vikas Math, and today we're unpacking a really massive shift in Indian taxation. We're going to take a journey from the incredibly balanced, ancient wisdom of our past straight into the sheer, overwhelming digital complexity of our present. If filing your returns has ever left you feeling completely frustrated or just totally lost in a maze of numbers, you're definitely going to want to stick around for this.
Right, so let's just jump straight into it. We all know this familiar feeling, don't we? Staring at glowing screens late at night, drowning in a sea of receipts, cross-checking endless forms. I mean, it's pretty much a universal modern experience at this point. Just the sheer stress of trying to get the math exactly right, constantly hoping the government portal doesn't crash on you at the very last minute, and praying you haven't accidentally broken some obscure rule you didn't even know existed. It's an incredibly pressurized environment for almost everyone. So it really makes you wonder, why does contributing to our nation's growth have to feel like such a monumental, anxiety-inducing headache today? I mean, taxation is supposed to be the engine that keeps a country running smoothly, but for the average citizen, the whole process often feels way more like a punishment than a meaningful contribution. Has it always been like this? Has paying taxes literally always been a guaranteed source of high blood pressure? Well, to find that answer, we actually need to travel back in time. Enter the Arthashastra. This is a brilliant ancient text written by Chanakya, who you might also know as Kautilya. And this wasn't just some abstract philosophical musings either. It laid out exact, highly practical rules on exactly how a king should govern, and crucially, how to collect taxes fairly. He basically built an economic system that was rooted entirely in balance, rather than just simple extraction. And here is where it gets absolutely fascinating. In ancient India, they had this core concept of dharma. Taxes were viewed primarily through the lens of a moral duty. It was seen as a shared responsibility to protect the kingdom and help out the vulnerable. And the foundational rule? The king only ever took what the citizen could easily afford to give. Every single coin or grain that was collected was strictly earmarked for the public good. So it wasn't seen as the ruler just confiscating your wealth. It was simply you doing your part to sustain the whole community.
So, what did this actually look like in practice? At the heart of this ancient framework was the Bhaga rule. This was basically the primary farm tax, and it was set at roughly 16.6%, meaning farmers paid exactly 1/6 of their harvest to the king. Think about that for a second. There was no complicated math, no hidden surcharges, no confusing tiered brackets to decipher. Just a very straightforward, predictable fraction of what the earth actually yielded that particular season. And that brilliantly illustrates how naturally fair the whole system was. Just think about the incredible flexibility built right into this model. If it rained well and the crops thrived, sure, the king naturally got more. But what if the crops failed because of a terrible drought? The tax simply dropped to zero. The state actually shared the risk with the citizen. That is just an incredible level of empathy built directly into an economic policy, making sure that vulnerable farmers were naturally protected from going bankrupt. Plus, the actual collection process was incredibly direct. Royal officers would visit the farms to measure the crops, and the citizen handed over the grain personally. This meant the output was highly visible. Farmers could literally stand there and watch their hard-earned grain being loaded up to feed the army or to fill up the village's emergency storehouses. They saw exactly where their contribution went, which obviously created a really deep sense of trust. So, if we boiled it all down, the crucial takeaway here is just the sheer simplicity of it all. You had direct collection right at the farm, absolutely zero middlemen to skim off the top or confuse things, and highly visible output for the public good. But honestly, the most enviable part is definitely the simple rules. No dense paperwork, no complex deductions to calculate. And you certainly didn't need to hire an expensive accountant or a tax lawyer just to figure out what you owed your own government. Okay, let's snap back to reality and fast forward to today. We are trading those golden green fields for glowing blue digital portals. We've completely shifted away from handing over tangible physical goods to transferring money through complex online systems. And all of it is governed by incredibly dense legal codes. Because now, instead of that simple 1/6 fraction, we're navigating a heavily tiered system for our income. Under the new modern regime, sure, it starts at zero for the lowest earners. But as you climb the financial ladder, those rates jump dramatically. You go from 5% to 10% to 15%, all the way up to a 30% tax rate based on your annual earnings. Basically, the more you earn, the steeper the climb, requiring some really careful calculation at every single step of the way. And of course, it's not just direct income tax, right? Indirect taxes are absolutely everywhere. Our modern goods and services tax, or GST, is spread out across a pretty dizzying spectrum of slabs. You're paying 5% on basic daily needs like spices and life-saving medicines. Then it jumps to 12% and 18% for standard electronics and services. And it even reaches a hefty 28% on luxury items like big cars. Literally every single time you buy something, you're interacting with this heavily layered, complex system. Now, as you can probably guess, all this dense complexity inevitably breeds modern challenges, which loops us right back to that anxiety-inducing headache we talked about earlier. High rates and confusing rules unfortunately push some people toward tax evasion. Then you've got the massive technological hurdles, like government portals crashing on the very last day of filing, which triggers unfair late fees and just immense stress. And fundamentally, there's a really deep lack of awareness out there, primarily because schools rarely teach us how to actually navigate these modern financial labyrinths. So putting them side by side, we're left staring at this massive complexity gap between the past and the present. On one side, ancient India was driven by dharma. It was incredibly simple and highly flexible to the actual reality of people's lives. On the other side, modern India is driven by strict legal penalties. It is so extraordinarily complex that we literally have to hire experts like chartered accountants just to comply. And the flexibility? It's practically zero. You're facing fixed rules and rigid fines if you're even a single day late. Which brings us to what I think is arguably the most beautiful piece of ancient Indian philosophy regarding state revenue. It says, taxes should be collected like a bee taking nectar from a flower without harming its petals. I mean, how great is that? The philosophy dictated a smooth, seamless collection that never, ever damaged the livelihood of the citizen providing it. It was a mutual exchange sustaining both the bee and the flower in perfect harmony. Look, there's absolutely no denying that our modern digital systems are incredibly powerful. But if we really want to fix the overwhelming stress of tax season, maybe we need to remember this ancient wisdom. So I'll leave you with this. How can we redesign our digital systems to be simpler and friendlier so that taxation once again feels like a harmonious contribution rather than a bureaucratic headache? Thank you so much for joining me, Vaucus Math, for today's explainer. I really hope this gave you a completely new perspective for the next time you have to look at a